In a wildlife sanctuary, a young boy found himself alone and weeping on a deserted path when a lion spotted him. The formidable creature fixed its gaze on the boy and let out a thunderous roar before it began to sprint towards him. What happened next was nothing short of miraculous. The lion, named Ranger, circled the increasingly distraught child. It was the break of dawn, and they were all alone. Ranger, the impressive lion with a flowing mane, walked back and forth in the morning air. Abruptly, he halted and looked intently at the boy. The child's face was flushed and puffy from tears, and he gazed back at the lion, his eyes brimming with tears. The lion then lifted its head and roared fiercely, showing its teeth in a menacing display. On the barren road, the boy had no escape route. Ranger roared again, his eyes burning with intensity as he stared down at the young boy. Ranger had been a resident of the safari park since Owen, a wildlife ranger, saved him when he was just a cub. Owen found Ranger clinging to his deceased mother, who had been killed by poachers. The cub was too young to fend for himself, so Owen took him under his care, often waking in the night to feed him. Having been a part of the reserve staff from the age of 16, Owen knew the importance of integrating Ranger with other lions quickly to prevent him from becoming overly dependent on humans. The large reserve housed several lion prides, and Owen hoped an experienced mother would adopt Ranger. When Ranger was strong enough, Owen entrusted him to a lioness who had recently given birth to her third cub. She was both fiercely protective and incredibly tender, a mix that Owen hoped would benefit Ranger. Fortunately, Owen's expertise proved correct, and the lioness welcomed Ranger into her family. Owen was thrilled with this development and observed as Ranger grew, eventually separating from the pride. Male lions are solitary by nature, and leaving the pride was fraught with danger. Although Ranger was safer within the confines of the reserve, there was always the risk he might come across a dominant male and end up fighting for territory or mates. Owen cherished the lion prides most about his job at the reserve, yet he always kept a vigilant watch on Ranger. Having rescued Ranger as a cub, Owen felt a deep connection to the lion's well-being. Unbeknownst to him, Ranger was about to do something utterly unexpected. Despite his challenging beginnings, Ranger had thrived in the reserve. His courage, fierce demeanor, and considerable stature quickly establishing him as a leading male. There had been numerous battles, most of which Ranger had won. Although the confrontations were brutal, they were a natural part of life in the wild, replicated here on the reserve. Here, however, the lions were protected from poachers, and a veterinary team was on hand to ensure the survival of these often endangered creatures. So while Owen sometimes worried about Ranger, he knew the lion was in the safest possible environment. The reserve was diligent in its efforts to shield the animals from poachers, yet recent breaches by hunters had heightened the urgency to fortify the reserve's boundaries. It was through these compromised perimeters that Ranger would encounter a distraught young boy. Awakening from his rest with the dawn breaking, Ranger was ready to hunt during the cooler morning hours. His stomach growled softly as he stretched languidly, preparing to search for food. Living independently from a pride presented challenges, but Ranger managed well. As he stood and stretched once more, a strange noise and scent carried by the wind caught his attention. Intrigued, Ranger followed his instincts and soon found himself on the dirt road facing the abandoned, crying boy. The child, barely 3 years old, sat in the road with his blue jacket hood pulled over his head. Ranger, keeping a cautious distance, circled the boy, his eyes never straying from the child. The cries pierced the air, causing Ranger's demeanor to shift visibly. He paced back and forth, seemingly torn by the situation. Abruptly, he stopped. A new scent filled the air, and Ranger's hackles rose. He stared intensely at the young boy, whose face was swollen with tears, and roared terrifyingly, revealing his sharp teeth. The roar silenced the boy instantly. It appeared as though rage filled Ranger's eyes. Yet he was not looking at the child, but over his shoulder. Without warning, Ranger charged and leapt over the boy's head. Apologies for the interruption. Please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support is crucial to us. Thanks a lot." Suddenly, a loud thumping noise made the young boy whirl around. There, trapped on the ground, was another lion, with Ranger dominating the scene above him, his roars thunderous and his massive claws swiping fiercely. The lions clashed briefly, yet it was clear that the newcomer was no match for Ranger. Meanwhile, Owen continued along the dirt path, oblivious to the extraordinary scene unfolding before him. The beleaguered lion struggled to escape Ranger's powerful grip. As the Ranger turned the bend and caught sight of the battling lions, a scene not uncommon in his line of work, his stomach churned at the sight of the boy mere feet from the danger. Unaware of how the child had entered the reserve, he knew immediate action was needed. Owen pressed the accelerator, speeding his jeep towards the boy. The second lion managed to wriggle free from beneath Ranger and limped away, while the larger lion's roar echoed as he turned his attention back to the boy. Owen adored Ranger more than anything, but knew any harm to the boy could spell catastrophe for the reserve. However, what unfolded next nearly caused Owen to veer off the road in astonishment. The enormous lion settled next to the boy, forming a protective shield as he surveyed the area, ensuring no threats lingered that could harm the child. Owen realized that he hadn't been witnessing a battle over territory or prey. Ranger had been defending the boy. He had intervened to protect the child from the other lion. Owen's mind raced back to the moment he discovered Ranger, a young cub, crying beside his deceased mother. Could Ranger have sensed a similar vulnerability in the boy? Astonished by the turn of events, Owen felt a mix of relief and hope that his judgment of Ranger had been correct. Still, with the lion guarding the boy, Owen knew he had to safely retrieve the child from the road and uncover what had led him here. If Ranger resisted his approach, Owen was uncertain of the next steps. Owen turned off the Jeep's engine and cautiously opened the door. Among all the Rangers, he was the sole one Ranger trusted. He had spent countless hours observing and tracking Ranger, who seemed aware of his presence yet never disturbed. It was as if Ranger remembered Owen's act of rescue, influencing how he interacted with him differently from others. Hoping this bond would now benefit him, Owen exited his vehicle. Ranger eyed him as he approached, but the formidable lion showed no urgency to shift away. Ranger examined Owen intently, as if gauging his intentions. After a moment, he stretched leisurely and wandered off. Owen waited patiently, understanding that he had passed Ranger's implicit test of trust. He refrained from rushing, knowing the importance of cautious steps. Once the lion had moved a safe distance away, Owen gently lifted the boy into his arms. The child, previously soothed by Ranger's presence, now began to cry once more. With no other option, Owen held the boy close as he drove slowly back to the reserve office, his thoughts swirling with questions. He was baffled by the child's abandonment on the road and still reeling from the astonishing loyalty displayed by Ranger. The most immediate way to seek answers was to check the CCTV footage, hoping it captured something revealing. Upon reviewing the CCTV at the reserve's boundary, Owen's heart sank. The footage showed an old, worn-out car pulling up just outside the fence. He could barely discern a young man in the driver's seat. Shortly after, a young woman emerged holding a child. She glanced around swiftly, seemingly searching for something, then noticed a breach in the fence. Struggling initially, she eventually pushed through with the child and set him down on the dirt track where Owen had found him. The footage captured a poignant moment as she kissed the boy tenderly on the forehead before returning to the car and driving away, leaving the boy alone. As the camera continued, it showed the little boy looking after the disappearing car, his parents now nowhere in sight. Owen was left perplexed and heartbroken. The mother's kiss seemed gentle and loving, suggesting she felt compelled to leave her child, perhaps believing he would be quickly found given the proximity to the monitored area of the reserve. Maybe she assumed a ranger would be nearby to ensure his safety. Despite the myriad of questions that might never be answered, Owen was resolved to do everything within his power to locate the boy's parents, although he suspected they might never return. After reviewing the video, Owen prepared a meal for the young boy who appeared to be more at ease. Seeing this as an opportune moment, the ranger attempted to gather some details from him before needing to contact the authorities. The boy was visibly scared, but he managed to share that his name was Daniel. Now faced with the task of making some tough calls, Owen observed Daniel cautiously eating his meal while pondering a striking realization. He remembered how he had saved Ranger, a lion cub, after the loss of his mother, and saw a parallel in how Ranger had just safeguarded a young boy abandoned by his parents. It seemed like a full circle, except this time, no one would be there to care for the boy after he left Owen's protection, unlike Ranger, who had remained with the ranger. Understanding that desperation must have driven his parents to abandon him, especially considering the poverty around the reserve, Owen recalled the footage of a young woman with Daniel searching for his parents, feeling deeply saddened by the boy's uncertain future once he left the reserve. When the authorities arrived, they found Daniel engaged with videos on Owen's phone, seemingly brighter after his meal. The boy excitedly pointed outside, exclaiming, "Lion," and mimicking its roar, bringing a smile to Owen's face. The ranger inquired about the child's future, learning from the authorities that if no relatives were found, Daniel would be placed in an orphanage with the hope of adoption. The prospect of such significant changes troubled Owen, who was reluctant to contemplate the impact on the young boy. Before he fully realized the implications of his decision, Owen impulsively offered to care for the boy while the authorities searched for his relatives. It was an impromptu decision. He had no prior experience with children, but the boy had won his heart just as Ranger had years ago. However, a few days later, Owen was hit with disappointing news. Daniel's family was nowhere to be found, and the boy was destined for the orphanage. Owen watched the boy who had quickly adapted to his new environment. Just the day before, he had taken Daniel to see the lions, and the child's joyful squeals upon seeing the cubs were a sight to behold. Witnessing the reserve through Daniel's eyes was a refreshing experience. Owen realized that Daniel would one day question his abandonment, and while the full truth might never be disclosed, Owen could be the one to assure him of his parents' love and recount the tale of the lion that had safeguarded him. Determined, Owen decided against the orphanage. He resolved to adopt Daniel himself. The ensuing months were challenging as he navigated the adoption process to become Daniel's legal guardian. At last, the process concluded, and the new father and son celebrated their new beginning with a drive to see the lions. As they neared the spot where Daniel had been found, they spotted Ranger in the golden hues of the evening sun. The lion, upon noticing the little boy peering through the Jeep window, lifted his head and gazed at Owen, recognizing the man who had saved not just him, but now a young boy as well. Owen eagerly anticipated the day he would share Ranger's story with his son, explaining their unique bond. With a rescued lion and a young boy as his family, Owen's life was unconventional, yet he cherished every moment of it. Did you enjoy this tale? What would you do if you were in Owen's shoes? Would you have adopted the child or sent him to an orphanage? Have you ever encountered a lion? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you like the story, please subscribe to our channel and hit the like button. Owen truly demonstrated his immense heart. It takes courage to love, not fear. Goodbye. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next one. Have a fantastic day.